Turning now to Ukraine, some major developments over the last couple of days on a potential Ukraine peace deal. There's been a lot of back and forth between the United States on whether a peace plan is even real or not. There is officially some progress, at least for right now. The United States, the Europeans, and the Ukrainians met in Geneva over the weekend. This is what the Ukrainian lead negotiator had to say. Let's take a listen.
We have a very productive first session with distinguished American delegation. We have very good progress and we are moving forward to the just and lasting peace. Ukrainian people deserve and want this peace more than anyone in this planet. We thank our big friends, United States and personal President Trump and his team to their commitment to bring this peace. And we will continue to work today, as Secretary said. We will be working and in coming days to join proposals. And we will also will engage our European friends. And of course, the final words will be of our leaders, of the President of the United States and Ukraine. And I hope that we can achieve the good progress today.
Okay, so that was the words from the negotiator there for the Ukrainian side. There has been so much back and forth on a peace plan. There's a European counterproposal. Let's go ahead and put the next element up on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and read from some of the most key parts of what eventually was accepted by the United States as its outline for a peace plan. Here are the key points. Number one, the size of the Ukrainian armed forces would be limited to 600,000 personnel. Now, this is a sticking point around the size of the Ukrainian military. The Ukrainians and the Europeans pushing it very, very hard against this. Ukraine currently has some 2 million people in the military, 900,000 active duty personnel. This was specifically a part which is being requested and being pushed by the Russian side because, of course, they don't necessarily want to sign a peace deal, some end to the war, which would also keep a massive, major Ukrainian military there as some sort of demilitarized zone. And then, of course, keep the war continuing and make it so that some sort of conflict may break out. Obviously, that's up to them. They didn't necessarily have to invade in the first place. Not justifying it, just explaining from their side, but this is a huge sticking point for the Ukrainians and the Europeans, but one that was accepted by the US and was apparently requested, or at least negotiated with the Russians. Number two, this is the big sticking point too. Ukraine agrees to enshrine in its constitution it will not join NATO, and NATO agrees to include in its statutes a provision that Ukraine will not be admitted in the future. I would say this is the biggest sticking point out of all of them, Krystal, and this is the one which is directly countered in the European peace proposal that is put forward. Let's go back and rewind the clock all the way to the very beginning. What was the number one reason that Russia said that they invaded Ukraine? NATO. They said, we want an assurance that Ukraine will never be in NATO. And then if you want to rewind the clock even further, it's NATO that actually invited Ukraine and Georgia to be in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in the first place, which was a huge sticking point between the US and Ukraine, or the US and Russia, specifically NATO and Russia, about encroachment, all that. We've gone a million times through the justifications, and for the US side as to why it was a good plan, we've explained some of the Russian security objections to increased NATO encroachment in their traditional territory. Nobody said that they should have invaded, not justifying it in that way at all. But it is a political reality whenever you're a nuclear-armed state with some 9,000 warheads. At the end of the day, they did invade Ukraine. And of course, it's not like their military did all that well in the first couple of years. It's only recently, with brute force and manpower, they've been able to achieve any military success at all. But the truth is we are where we are. There are probably a million or so people dead, hundreds of thousands who have been wounded, millions who have been displaced from Ukraine. The Russian military and the Russian people, more importantly, do not seem to care whatsoever that hundreds of thousands of their countrymen are being led to slaughter in Ukraine. They just don't care. It's kind of remarkable, honestly. It's not really something that I would have predicted. I thought it might have gone the way of Afghanistan. But they're in a much stronger position than they were in, let's say, a year or so into the war, when the ability of the Ukrainians to actually mount a real counteroffensive could have happened. Putin's point from the beginning, at least in these negotiations, has been, I'm really not going to give up much. Some of this territory, which I'm asking for, I'll either take it through blood or you can give it to me right now. and we can stop the killing, and then we can sign some sort of overarching peace agreement. But in my opinion, the European and Ukrainian position remains delusional. You are not going to be in NATO. Period. It would actually be insane to give you NATO membership at this point because parts of your country, which you claim is yours, is literally under military occupation by a nuclear armed state of a foreign power. You can invoke Article 5 at any time. And, you know, there's a case, I think at least somewhat, given Putin's reaction, the Russian people's reaction and more, that NATO membership actually is just a non-starter for a lot of the Russian population, their political establishment, and Vladimir Putin, and their ability to continue and to fight this war. So what are we all going to do here? I'll just say what strikes me the most is that even this peace deal, which gives security guarantees for the remainder of Ukraine, that's still not enough for the European. This is the best thing you could possibly get. You're basically getting some sort of NATO Article 5 style guarantee without being inside of NATO. Yes, you have to give up part of territory which are currently under Ukrainian occupation. That's a bitter pill to swallow. I understand. I just read a testimony from a Ukrainian soldier on the front line who, look, I am cherry picking, but he was like, guys, there's nobody here. It's all destroyed anyways. And we're probably going to lose it in the first place. To be fair, 50% of some Ukrainian soldiers also say that they don't want to accept the peace deal. But I don't know. I mean, this entire thing, it's a boondoggle. It's a money laundering operation of epic proportions on the Ukrainian side. Insane corruption scandals that have been happening there day after day. Their own military, the average age, somewhere between 40 and 50 years old. Yes, they've stood firm, and you got to, of course, give them credit for it, but they don't have a chance of holding any of this territory in the long run. You're going to lose it no matter what. I mean, it's just going to happen. The only question is how much money, how many lives, and how much longer this thing has to continue. So I really don't know. I mean, I don't really think there's a weapon system in the world, absent a nuke, that we could give the Ukrainians that could help them accomplish their military objectives at this point. So it's pretty delusional.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should acknowledge the deal that as proposed is disgusting and unjust based on the fact that the Russians were the aggressors. You know, it includes giving up all of Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk, even parts that the Russians have not been able to take militarily at this point. Kherson and Zaporizhia will be frozen along the current contact lines, but those other regions you're just handing over to Russia. You have the limits on Ukrainian military size, and they're looking at this going, okay, but they just invaded us, and now you're limiting our ability to be able to fight back. And there's other pieces of this. I mean, the economic part of it is effectively, I mean, it's like colonial exploitation. You know, it's certainly another effort to make billions of dollars for Trump and his family and Witkoff or whoever else is going to get their money-grubbing hands on this. It is a disgusting and unjust plan. Okay. Now we have to deal with reality. What are the alternatives? And, you know, it may be that through the negotiations, you can make this slightly more, more just towards the Ukrainian side. It's not going to be fully just. There's no doubt about that. But you can, maybe you can change some of the territorial requirements. Maybe you can lift a bit of the size of the military that will be allowed. Maybe you can change some of the different terms, et cetera. This is far from a done deal. But the reality is, if you're going to end the war at this point, it's going to be a hideous deal. It's going to be hideous. It's going to be hideous. It's going to be unfair. It's going to be unjust. It's going to be, all of those things. The question is the continuation of the war more hideous and more unjust? Is it going to lead to an even worse outcome? And unfortunately, I think that is where we are. Unless we're willing to go all the way in and be boots on the ground with them and go to full-blown war against, this nuclear armed superpower, which I don't think is in the best interest of our country or the world. Unless you're willing to do that, you're talking about continued horror, continued war, continued blood and death. And very likely, Russia ends up taking these parts of the territory that are being offered in this deal to begin with. So it's ugly. It's an ugly. If we're going to end it now, it is going to be an extremely ugly end. But what's even uglier is to continue the war in this manner and just continue to bleed out an entire generation of Ukrainian men.
Yeah, look, I get it. It's tough. And it's very easy for me to say. I live in the most powerful military, in a country with the most powerful military in the world. It's not up for negotiation. But that's not the case for the vast majority. And by the way, if you look at your own history, you are lucky to be alive. I mean, that's the truth. You are lucky that you get to remain as a polity in the first place. You have accomplished actually something quite great. You held off the Russians from taking over your entire country. It's the Europeans and the US's fault for selling you a dream that you were going to survive, completely intact, and they were going to take back Crimea in the first place. We got way too high on their own supply, and then the military reality of what it's like to fight Russia started to set in. That is the case. Look, the invasion of Russia was a disaster, actually, for Russia in the initial beginning. But major countries with huge industrial bases, with oil and with nuclear weapons, they can absorb some blows. This has been the history, basically, of the Russian nation now for over 100 years. And all of the promised hopes of destroying the Russian economy didn't happen. Creating a coup against Putin, nope, didn't happen. The only coup that they tried against him completely failed, and the guy, what did his plane crash or something like that? The Wagner Group dude, he died. All right, so there's no organized political opposition. Putin threw everybody in jail that he wanted to. If anything, he solidified his control over the oligarchs who he thought were getting too friendly with the European powers, and the people are mostly with him. People still continue to join the military. They're paying out high pensions. Their economy is a war machine, and it's humming. It's doing okay. None of these promises of how they were going to end the war ended up happening. And that was basically going to be the case from day one. Also, looking at this, even from what the Ukrainians are trying to demand, look how much better off they would have been back in April if they had just taken the peace deal in the first place. The US and the Europeans sold them a false bill of goods. By the way, the Europeans, I don't want to let them off the hook here. All they want right now is to keep this war going because they need the spigot and to basically keep their domestic political crises off to the side. They want the U.S. security umbrella. The longer the conflict goes on for them, it's good because it keeps them relevant in the eyes of the United States. It keeps it a live issue. And one of the worst things that could ever happen to the Europeans is if it ends, and right now there's all of these fights between the EU and the U.S. about withdrawing the U.S. from, the eastern flank of NATO. Like, they need that to keep going. So there's a lot of self-interest that's happening here at the same time. I just want to skip ahead to C4. Just don't want to let the U.S. off the hook. And this is where probably my most sympathetic take from the Ukrainians comes is, can we really trust these people? I don't know, man. Because here's really what happened with the plan. The original plan that we just showed you leaked. The U.S. confirmed that that plan was real. Some U.S. senators condemned that plan. Then some U.S. senators said that Rubio called them and denied it was the real plan. The White House then denied that denial, and Rubio came full circle and said, yes, it was our real plan. So there is a lot of chaos, all right, that's actually currently happening behind the scenes. And we at the very least have to acknowledge that for the Ukrainians, because they're dealing with such a capricious and chaotic administration, this is the fate of their country. And it is a bitter pill to swallow. So I understand it, and they need to get their shit together if they actually want anything to happen, because I'm personally tired of all this back. Zelensky comes, then they berate him. Zelensky comes, now we're friends. Zelensky comes, along with all of these EU ministers, and we have the whole Putin summit, and shit doesn't happen. And then we're going to sanction Russia, actually. So everything is all over the place. And for all the Ukrainians who are crying right now, you guys have all been here before with Trump. He could change his mind literally at any moment. So don't be too assured that any of this is all that serious. So there you go.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, the other part is like the cash grab, disaster capitalism aspect of it is obviously also disgusting. And that is one of the areas where they're at odds with the Europeans too, in terms of how they would use these Russian frozen assets. What they propose in the Trump deal is basically like, some portion of it will be used for reconstruction, and the other portion is going to go into a joint investment vehicle with Russia. And even the portion of the Russian assets that are being used for Ukrainian reconstruction are going to be done so directed by the U.S. So, I mean, listen, we know how this administration operates. It's going to be, a massive enrichment scheme for whether it's Kushner or Trump's, other Trump family members, Witkoff, his family members, other allies, whatever. Like, we can all see how this is going to go, which is utterly disgusting, right? Yeah. Let's not put that to the side. One other aspect of this, Saagar, that you alluded to, it's just important to understand the political dynamics here too, is Obviously, Zelensky has pushed off any sort of elections while the war was going on, saying, hey, we're in a state of emergency, state of war. We can't have elections. We've just got to, continue in the direction that we are. He is embroiled. Ukraine has long been a corrupt state. Zelensky won initially on a promise to root out corruption. So this has been a deep concern for the Ukrainian people. There is a massive scandal with regard to basically their atomic energy agency, goes right into Zelensky's innermost circle, does not directly implicate him, but raises a whole lot of questions about what is going on here. So the other piece is, if the war ends, then you're going to have elections and you're going to have somewhat of a reckoning around, the corruption scandals that have come out increasingly during this war. So that is another piece of the backdrop here of, the calculus for Zelensky himself.
You're exactly right. There's been huge political scandals. In fact, Tucker Carlson just tweeted out this morning, the Wall Street Journal is sitting on a major corruption story for one of Ukraine's closest political negotiators, and that they won't run it because they don't want to sabotage the deal. I don't know if he's right. We'll see what the Journal says, but just wouldn't surprise me, is all I'll say.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.